Come on, y'all.
Hey, and here we go.
Welcome to the Cheer Chronicles Podcast with Rosie.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Cheer Chronicles Podcast. I am your host, Rosie. How are you all? I hope you all are having a good week. On this podcast for this week, we are going full out on practices. I want to clarify real quick because I've had some questions on this for anyone listening. I think we're up to 5 listeners now, so welcome. All my episodes are full out and then the subject. So for example, full out on practice, full out on commitment, full out on the guest name, and the subject we're talking about that during that episode. So I hope that makes sense on why it's all episodes are full out. Okay. So now that we got that out of the way, I've had some people fact check me, and it's mostly my kids. They listened to the podcast on the way up to their cheer comp this weekend. So let me set the record straight. During my commitment episode, I mentioned that I coached 4 teams last year and took 4 teams to nationals, and that was incorrect. I did coach 4 teams last season, but I only took 3 to nationals. Also, in that same episode, I mentioned that my 10-year-old wanted to quit cheer because she didn't like the conditioning, but at the time, she wasn't 10, she was actually 9. And I mentioned and kept mentioning that she was 10. I don't know why I did that, but my bad, y'all. I'm glad we got that out of the way. This episode this week is about practice. During this weekend, while we were at cheer comp, I was standing next to a friend of mine, in that parent viewing area before you go and watch your kids perform on the mat. So we were there, and she said, I know that the first few episodes of your podcast are going to be about subjects that are near and dear to your heart. And she's correct, 100%. I was like, you know me really well. And she does, because we've been coaching together for 5 years. So this episode is about practice. I know what you're thinking. Not competition, practice. Haha, I don't know if you see what I did there, but anyway. Practice does not make perfect, and I'm a big believer in that quote by Vince Lombardi, which goes on to say, only perfect practice makes perfect. To me, what's important is to show up to practice ready to work. Now, I hope I don't upset anyone, but I'm probably going to upset some people right now because it's important for cheer athletes to show up to practice. Any cheer practice. One is not more important than the other. And fair warning, I'm probably going to say that a few times during this pod. As an athlete and a cheer team, sometimes things aren't clicking and practices aren't going super well. And I know that even some coaches and some parents are probably like, we need a team bonding. We need a team bonding so they could, get to know each other. And mind you, this is like in the middle of the season sometimes. Like, we know each other. I'm pretty sure. We're in the middle of the season. But they give the team the benefit of the doubt. Let's plan a team bonding. Here we are. The parents go all out for this team bonding. To me, my opinion, right? Team bonding starts when you start showing up to practice. In my opinion, what makes a team bond is that time during practice, working hard together through the mistakes and the triumphs. Of course, team bondings, don't get me wrong, it's super important, super fun for athletes, but really the hard work is what brings a team together. It's at that time where they begin to trust each other. I always tell my teams we win together, we lose together, we work hard together, and we have fun together when the time is right. But I'm not fully convinced that a team bonding event is going to bring this team together at all. I think what brings the team together is practicing together all the time, showing up, not missing practices. So as a cheer coach, I can't express enough how important practice is. Again, it's all about the commitment. If we have an athlete missing, it really does frustrate me. And I can't imagine that it doesn't frustrate not only the coaches, but the team as well. Now, don't get me wrong, emergencies are understandable, but missing practice for an appointment that could have been made for another day or simply because the athlete may not feel like attending that day is not okay. Sometimes athletes have a hard practice and then the next practice, they don't show up. Why are you not showing up? You need to show up. And parents, please try and communicate with the coaches when your athlete may not be at practice as soon as possible. Don't wait 5 minutes before practice to let us know. Here's why. As a coach, if an athlete is missing my practice, and again, as coaches, we all have different ways of coaching. But if an athlete is missing my practice, or I have a few athletes missing, I will maybe concentrate on other parts of the routine that highlight those athletes that are at practice. For example, we can concentrate on jumps and dance that day since we can't do stunts because we have athletes missing. And no, I am a huge believer that practices should not be canceled. Even if it's 3 or 4 people showing up, we're going to show up and show out at practice, regardless of who's there. I have that mentality of never canceling practices. And actually, it's from a coach that mentored me when I first started coaching. She told me, try never to cancel. If you have 2 athletes show up, we show up to practice. We're going to put in the work that day and maybe, again, perfect a few parts of the routine. There's always room for improvement. So I'm not canceling practice. And parents, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this real clear for the people in the back who can't hear me. School cheer practice, school cheer, that practice is just as important as any other sport practice, all-star cheer practice. It kills me when I hear parents say, well, it's just school cheer. It's okay. Not a big deal if he or she misses it. It's just school cheer. No big deal. When that is the attitude towards school cheer, trust and believe that is the effort your kid is giving to the sport in that aspect. Cheer is cheer, commitment is commitment, and effort is effort, period. So here's a prime example of how athletes that might do other sports or are new to cheer or just do all-star cheer may have a change of heart when it comes to sideline cheer. So this year, I took my middle school team to nationals and we competed in the game day division. I love game day. Game day is my favorite part of cheer. We had our camp at the beginning of the summer when the team first came together. So we have a camp and we do a home camp with NCA. And they came up with a game day routine, which included a cheer chant and a band dance. Now, we weren't sure if we were going to have a game day team to take to nationals. My assistant coach and I talked about it over the summer. It was a huge commitment on both our parts, to be honest. And then a lot of the parents and, again, our athletes weren't fully convinced that they wanted to do it because middle schoolers normally don't do game day routines at a national competition. So in October, we finally had a parent meeting and we had 14 girls say yes from our sideline team. And we were super excited. And I was like, all right, we're doing it. We're going for game day. So this was my first time taking a team for game day. So my daughter and I, my oldest daughter and I, we came up with the fight song for the routine and we practiced. We would do Saturday practices, Friday night practices at times. These young ladies had never done a game day routine and some of them even thought, even though they were all-star cheerleaders, they thought, man, this is hard. The routine, the transitions, the preciseness of it all, it's not an easy task at all. Sideline cheer is where this sport began, and if we don't respect it, all aspects of it, as athletes and parents of the sport, I fear we're doing it a disservice. Respect the sport, period. All aspects of it, please. One, again, is not more important than the other. And speaking of, please don't allow the athletes to miss school cheer and then show up to all-star cheer on the same day like nothing's wrong. It kills the morale on the team, especially if those girls from school cheer know it. Like, why do that? If you show up for one, show up for the other. It's important. They're both important. So I'm telling you as a coach, communication from my parents is key when it comes to practices. If you know your child made the team and you have a trip planned, can you tell the coach as soon as possible, please? Please don't wait till a week before to tell us that you're going to be out of town for a whole week or even longer. Not only does it hurt the team at practice and possibly even during, when we go out and compete, because now we've had an athlete missing for 2 weeks, it also stirs things up because believe me, the kids that are at practice go home and tell their parents that someone went on vacation during the middle of the cheer season. I'm astonished, really, because even as I speak about it, I'm like, I can't believe it. So parents start sending the coaches emails asking why one athlete is allowed to miss practice when their child was told not to miss practice. It opens up a can of worms on all ends. And granted, I get it. It's none of their business, right? What you plan, and I'm all for family time 100%. But as coaches, we deal with that often. Why is my kid able to do that and your kid isn't? And why is this kid able? And honestly, it's not fair, right? It's not fair to the kids who show up and didn't go on the vacation. So if you plan a vacation, let the coaches know right away, because then we'll plan the routine. I know that so-and-so is missing next week, then we might have things to work on before he or she is away. Okay? Also, please, I'm a big believer in this. If your child misses practice after practice after practice and comes back to a whole new position in the routine, don't ask the coaching staff, why is that happening? Like, why is my child not center flyer anymore? Maybe because you're not at practice and we need to get this routine done. So show up. It's not fair to the other athletes that you're not there, especially if the parents aren't having any communication with the coaches. Now, from a cheer mom perspective, I think practice is important. I don't have a huge difference in opinion when it comes to practice. Like, to me, it's just as important. I know this is kind of crazy. It's just as important as not missing school. I know as a family it's difficult because we don't plan any vacations due to cheer, but this is all part of the commitment. Again, I try my best to have any appointments scheduled, on days that we don't have cheer. I do have to say that my oldest has been late for a few practices, but I communicate these dates with the coaches at the very beginning of the season. Usually, as soon as I know what team they're on, I let them know to make sure nothing interferes with cheer. So, again, making sure we are at every practice is important. Missing school or practice is not an option unless absolutely necessary. It's giving letdown, 100%. Seriously, let a whole stunt group down? Like, why? The entire routine is off when there's an absence. Now, I have to mention that cheerleading, especially school cheer, is one of the longest seasons ever. For my kids, school cheer tryouts are usually in April. We go through football and basketball season, and we sometimes don't end the season till March, then turn around and do it all over again in a few weeks. Because in March, we start having parent meetings for cheer. I know it's exhausting for the kids, for sure, and parents too. I have to admit, though, the amount of fatigue that sets in is really something else, but showing up is still important. So if you are listening and have some insight maybe on how you or your program handles the long cheer season, please reach out. We'd love to hear your input and any tips you may have on handling the long school cheer season. Because again, it's like never ending. And the kids get fatigued. I get it. I 100% get it. But if you can, and I have to say, it's probably not the best practice, but I, as a coach, get a little lenient as we are ending the season because kids want to do other things, and I understand that. So if you need to miss a game or you need to miss a practice, as long as you communicate that with me, I understand. But I don't want that to be the emphasis of the program, right? So we still show up, obviously, but I do get a little lenient if I'm being 100% honest. So here's another aspect of practices. Now that we've gone through how important it is to show up to practices, let's dive into closed practices. Do we love them or hate them? I took a pause so you could think about it. I, of course, have an opinion on this. And as a parent, I do not like closed practices at all. Like at all, in all caps. I want to make sure my athlete is doing their job during practices. I want to be able to obviously see what's going on and see what they need to work on. I also want to make sure they're safe. Like, if you've ever seen me at cheer practice, and I know most of you listening have, when I'm there as a mom, I'm like going from place to place, depending on where my child is tumbling, to make sure that they landed their tumbling pass, like everything is okay. So I struggle as a parent not being able to watch practices if they're closed. Like, my daughter's going into varsity next year for school cheer, and I'm not going to be at those practices, and I'm already in a panic. I could only imagine that most parents would agree with this. I know that there's some that rather not watch practice. I think that's pretty cool that they let their athlete have that time with their team for themselves, but not me. I'm not that parent. I'm not. I want to be there. I want to watch. Not only because I love the sport, but obviously because, I don't know, I feel like I need to be there for my kid. Like, I don't know, that's just my opinion. So as a coach, I have a love and hate relationship with close practices. With my teams that I coach, most practices are closed because of the facilities where we practice. One of them has strict rules on parents watching from inside the gym, and the other does not allow for a parent viewing area inside the facility. But I think if we had the space, I would not mind parents watching some of the practices. Sometimes as coaches, we are told that we have favorites, or that their child wasn't given an opportunity, or maybe their child is being picked on, and most times that's not the case at all. I can't say that those things do not occur in any sport in general, but it's difficult as a coach to just sometimes take the heat that we get on certain things. Like, we are out here for these kids in the sport. So again, having the communication is key to successful season with all parties involved, especially if the practice is closed. Please go talk to your coach. Come talk to your coach so we can figure things out. Sometimes the athletes, especially if they're younger, like, they don't fully understand some things and they feel they're being moved because I didn't do a good job or the coach doesn't like me. And the truth is that your position might be moved because someone else is running across the mat to get to a stunt. And if we move you and put the other person on the other side where you were, then they could get to their stunt quicker, right? And not be in a panic putting their flyer up, or the flyer needs to go up, or whatever the case may be. So it's not always about, oh, my kid isn't a favorite or my kid isn't acknowledged. It's really about the team. So keep that in mind as well. Sorry, I went off there. Let's go back to what I was talking about. So I have an example from last season on how things could be misconstrued in a closed practice. So it was early on in the season and we were working on stunts for our routine, right? We had just gotten the choreography. And as you all know, every athlete has certain positions on the team. So this particular athlete was not part of the stunt team because she was a tumbler. She's a beautiful tumbler. We really needed to concentrate on the stunts. So that's what we did during that practice. So this athlete felt she was not needed at practice that day, which really falls on us as coaches. I have to be 100% honest. And I totally understood why she felt that way. So when her mom called me about practice that day, she told me maybe when we have practices like that, where we're concentrating on different things where her daughter might not be a part of, does she really need to be there? Can she skip practice that day? And I said, absolutely not, right? And we went through different scenarios. So I let her know that there'll be some practices where we would just concentrate on jumps and tumbling, which her daughter was a part of. That the season, as it progresses, our routine would come together, and towards the end, we would be doing like comp warm-ups and all the things to perfect our routine. And of course, the mom totally understood. She's an amazing person. But that is where, if she wouldn't have called me and we wouldn't have had that conversation, she's at home with her daughter thinking, well, should I go to practice tomorrow? Because if they concentrate on this part of the dance and I'm on the other side of the dance, then I don't need to go. Like, I could sit, and just come home. So again, that communication between her and I gave her a full understanding of how important practice is and what we do at practice. And also, it put me in check to make sure that, hey, even though we're concentrating on stunts during a practice, we also need to be engaging with this athlete who might just have, all the tumbling while the stunts are going up. So, and I'm a big believer that all the athletes are super important to the routine. We can't have this routine without any of them, right? On the team. So we want to make sure that they feel as part of the team as anyone else, right? So that's important too. So let's switch things up really quick before we end this episode. And by we, I guess I mean myself and all my personalities because nobody else is here but me. Anyway, let's talk about when athletes show up and they are not prepared for practice. OMG, why? Why do we do this? And some kids do forget things, maybe one time during the season. I know my kids have both forgotten things that are, at times I'm a little embarrassed. Like, why don't you have your cheer shoes? Or that time where we brought the same side cheer shoe. So that was a problem. But there's some athletes that are constantly forgetting their cheer shoes. Or if you're in sideline, you forget your pom-poms. I have to tell you that this is not okay. I always tell them, like, would a football player show up without their cleats on? No, they wouldn't. Not only is it not okay, but it's dangerous. Now, I can't have you stunt because you don't have the right shoes on. And I'm a firm believer that it's 1,000% the athlete's responsibility to have all their gear for practice. Even my younger ones. Parents should not be reminding them constantly, even though, who am I kidding? Every morning I'm like, do you have your cheer stuff ready? Hurry up and get your cheer stuff ready. But yeah, during practice, it's important that you show up and you are ready for practice. But athletes being prepared is crucial. Also, parents paid a lot of money for that practice gear. Again, it's dangerous if you show up and you don't have the proper cheer shoes or, your hair's a mess and it's all over your face while we're stunting. Get yourself into a routine where your child knows, just like, hey, you got to brush your teeth, you got to say your prayers, you got to pack for cheer, right? So it's important that they come prepared, right? Now you're at practice, super awesome, you showed up and we appreciate that, but you also need to bring your gear, right? This episode was a lot. I feel so passionate about this topic. I could probably talk about it for days, but luckily for you, I won't. All right, y'all, that concludes another episode. I'll catch you all on the sidelines of our next episode of the Cheer Chronicles podcast. Bye.